Hello everyone, hello, am I audible? Please someone let me know if I'm audible. Yes, Mukesh, recorded session will be available. Someone please just let me know if my voice is audible. Alright. Alright, so hey everyone, a very warm welcome to Vibe Coding 101, your 5-day front-end web development bootcamp brought to you by SmartEd. My name is Ujjwal Aman and I will be your mentor for the next few days. I've previously worked at Lead Squared and now I'm on a mission to make learning fun, practical, and genuinely useful for beginners like you. This bootcamp is going to be complete hands-on journey where we start with the complete basics of web development today. That means we'll start with HTML, CSS, JavaScript. I'll make sure you understand how to structure a web page, style it, and make it interactive using JavaScript. Over the next 2 days, we'll dive into React.js, which is one of the most in-demand libraries in front-end development right now. To learn how to build reusable components, dynamic user interfaces, just like pros. After that, and towards the end of week, we'll shift gears and explore Loveable.ai, an AI-powered tool that builds front-end visually. And if you want full control and flexibility as a developer, learning React will still be important. This bootcamp is absolutely free. So before we start, a few important announcements that we'll keep bringing such sessions to you. So you might receive a follow-up call after this to help us reach more learners. Do help spread the word if you find value in this bootcamp. Our next bootcamp will be on artificial intelligence, and if you're interested in joining, just select a yes in today's attendance form that you'll receive today. And to get a certificate for this bootcamp, attend all 5 days live. Fill the attendance form daily. This will be shared during the sessions. So make sure you stay till the end. Finally, ask questions, engage in chat, refrain from any unwanted chat, and make the most out of this experience. I'll be right here with you every step of the way. So let's get started with day 1, web development foundations. All right. Okay. So to start with, we'll start with HTML. We'll see introduction to HTML. What is HTML? Basic structure of an HTML document, importance and relevance of HTML in web development. So before we move ahead, I'm using a monitor for me, so I'll be looking towards my right for the monitor where everything is displayed. So what VS Code you see right here and the browser window. And towards the left I have my camera, so don't get confused if I'm looking at both the screens. Okay, so before we begin, there are some prerequisites. You need to have a web browser. It can be anything, a Safari or a Firefox or a Google Chrome, but since Google Chrome is supported by most of the libraries and is very consistent, and if you have to have the same experience as I am, I would prefer you guys to use Google Chrome as your web browser for this bootcamp. And for the code editor, it is nothing, just helps us write code and maintain the code, that's all. So for code editor, I'm using VS Code. All right. So we'll start with what is HTML. We'll start with learning a bit about what exactly is it and how do we use it to create websites. No matter what browser we use, be it Chrome, be it Firefox or Safari, or they just take different files such as the HTML, CSS and JavaScript files or images and render them into a website. Too low voice. All right, I'll just bring my laptop closer. Yeah, so but even though most modern websites are created using these different files, uh, basically all the modern websites are created using these three different files only. So what exactly is HTML? HTML, as for the full form, starts with hypertext markup language, is the standard markup language for documents designed to be displayed in the web, and it defines the content and structure of the websites. So you don't have to worry about what it means. It is simply a tool that we'll be using to create a website. Now, more about the text or the code editor that we're using. We'll be using VS Code. So why are we using VS Code? Because it makes writing code easy. It is compatible on all types of devices, and a lot of helpful tools which makes writing code error free, more readable. Some important VS Code extensions that I would want you to install is Live Server, Prettier, and Live Preview maybe, where you can download these. So I think you all are capable enough to download VS Code in a browser. I'll just show you from where you can download some extensions. So this is where you can search for extensions and install them, like I have some of the extensions for me. All right. Okay, I'll close this. Now, a website front end consists of the following parts. HTML, it is for the structure and the layout of the website. CSS, it is for the styling. And JavaScript, it gives functionality and logic to the website. So HTML is basically what the titles are, the overall structure, how the website will look like. Then CSS is for styling, so the colors, the font sizes, the indentation and everything. And then we have JavaScript, which gives functionality and logic. So let's say we click a button, where that will take you to what happens, certain animations, all of that is done with the help of JavaScript. Screen is not visible. Actually, I'm not sharing something. Wait. Let me see. Can you see my VS Code? Okay. Screen should be visible. Just give me a moment, I'll fix it. Is my screen visible now? Yep, I think my screen is visible. All right, all right. So we'll move ahead. So we'll move ahead with the basic structure of HTML. Am I audible now? Okay, okay. So we'll move ahead with the basic structure of HTML. Let me create an HTML document for you. So as we create a new file, to create an HTML file, we just need an .html extension to that file, and your HTML file is ready. So I'll just bring in the boilerplate. Okay, so this is what we call as the HTML boilerplate. This is how it looks. You don't need to worry, I'll explain each of these line by line. So boilerplate is nothing but a standardized reusable piece of code, and what this means is we'll be using and reusing this piece of code throughout our web development journey. So this bit of code that you see right here, whenever you want to create a website using HTML, you will be using this again and again. I'll break it down for you. So this line here, the exclamation mark doc type HTML, this tells the browser what version of HTML you are using, so that all the browser renders it the same way. All right, just give me a moment. Okay. Now the second line is HTML lang equals to and then apostrophe inside that there is en. Now this is nothing but root of the HTML document, and this language is the attribute of this particular root. So we are basically telling the browser that we want to render this website in the language English. All right. The third is the head tag. Okay, so these are tags. Anything that is enclosed between these angle brackets are tag, and these head tags contain all the metadata for the website. So this is the encoding, this is the viewport width and everything. So basically this tells the browser uh, what is the size and everything. This is responsible for the responsiveness of the website. So how your website is opening on the mobile screen, how is it going to open on desktop and everything, right? This is the title. This is basically what is displayed right here on your navigation bar. Okay, tab bar basically. So if you write, let's say YouTube, so this is going to appear as the title here on the top. Then we have the body tag, opening and the closing tag. So a closing tag will have a forward slash into it. So this is how we know this is the opening tag with no forward slash, and if there is a forward slash, this is the closing tag, right? So whatever is contained between these body tags is displayed on the website. So anything that you see, this entire thing right here is enclosed between these two body tags. Okay. Next is understanding tags and elements in detail. So when you take this particular thing, what is tag and what is element? What is the difference between a tag and element? So throughout this course, and you'll see me and everyone else on the internet referring to tags and elements. So what is the difference, right? These bit under the opening and the closing brackets, these are called as tags. And when you take the entirety of this opening and the closing tags, this is called an element. All right. So we use elements to describe anything that we can use to display on the web page. Okay, so this is what we use to display on the web page, and this is called as an element. Now we'll be using this term element throughout this course, and now you will be wondering why HTML is written in this way. So there is something called as syntax, right? Now what is syntax? It is the rules of how any language is written. It can be understood with the help of English language, where we have grammar. So biggest difference between English is, even if you make a mistake, so let's say if you leave a comma or if you do a spelling mistake, people still understand what you're trying to say. But in a coding language, you'll have to do the proper thing. You cannot make mistakes, so you'll have to follow proper syntax. You make a mistake and it does not work. So if I leave this and if I try to render this website, it won't open. So as long as you are following the proper syntax of HTML, it will work just fine, or any language, so as to say. So what are the syntax rule of HTML? It is all about opening and closing tags correctly. It tells the computer what we are trying to create in very layman terms. So learning HTML is all about learning different tags in HTML. Every element consists of two tags. One is the opening tag and the second one is the closing tag, as discussed previously. Now coming to the opening tag. So opening tag you can understand as the start of the paragraph. Closing tag is the end of the paragraph. Maybe you can understand with the full stop, and everything that comes in between is the content. Now let's look at some of the tags that is there in HTML. So we'll first look at the paragraph tag. Okay, so if you want to render this website, what you'll have to do is you simply hit save, or you can simply drag this here, and this is how your website is rendered. So right now, as we don't have any content between our body tag, so between our opening and the closing tags, nothing is rendered here. But you can see that since we entered YouTube right here, it is opening or showing up here in the tab bar, right? So let's look at some of the tags that we have in HTML. So we have the h1 tag. It is used for heading. So h1 stands for heading 1. It is the most important heading element in HTML. So you can write hello world. You hit save. Every time you make some changes into your file, you hit save and then you hit refresh and you see it appears here. Okay, so we have, then we have after h1 we have h2. So we need to edit both of our tags. We hit save, we hit refresh, and the styling of our content changes. Now why is that? So to understand heading elements, you can take a look at the index of your book. You'll see we have certain more important points starting from one. Let's say there is one is chapter 1, 2 is chapter 2, 3 is chapter 3, and then inside that chapter 1 we have sub chapters. Let's say chapter 1.1, chapter 1.2. So h1 is the main chapter 1 and h2 is chapter 1.1. So something inside h1, lower in importance. Okay, now after this we also have the paragraph tag. So we simply write p and we hit a tab. VS Code automatically completes it for you, and that is why it is helpful. You can also use any normal text editor. So Notepad on Windows and text editor on Mac if you're on a Mac, and you can write the entire thing. So you can start from opening bracket p, closing bracket, and then it automatically completes for me, but you can write the entire part. Then you can write anything. So lorem ipsum, you hit save, you hit refresh, and this is how it is displayed, right? So we have the p for paragraph tag. Then we can also create lists here. All right, so this UI stands for an unordered list, right? So to create a list, what you need to do is you first need to define what kind of list you want to create. So we have two types of list in HTML: unordered lists. So the bullet points that you see in any document is part of unordered list, and the numbering 1, 2, 3 is part of the ordered list. And then we can create list items manually. I'm creating it manually for you, but again you can use the shortcut. You can simply type in li and then hit tab to complete the entire thing. So let's say I want to create a list of fruits. So we'll write apple, then we'll write banana. Let's say we hit save, we hit refresh, and you see we have a list item here. Now we can go ahead and add links to our HTML document. So we'll use an anchor tag with simple A for that. All right, so let's say Google. I'll add a link of Google on my website. I hit save, I hit refresh. Now Google is here, but when I'm pressing it, nothing is happening. Why? Because we have not specified here where I want this link to go to. Okay, so we'll take the link of Google. Okay, we simply copy that, we paste it here, and now my anchor tag knows where I want to refer my link to. So when I hit save, hit refresh, now if I press Google, it will take me to Google, right? So this is how it works. Next up, after anchor, I want to spend some time on image tag. So you can again write image and hit tab to complete the entire thing. Now this has two parts, a source part and an alt attribute. And one important thing to notice here is we don't have a closing tag here. So these are called self-closing elements. As the word tells you, it does not have a closing tag, it self-closes itself. Okay, so at source we can add any image from Google. So let's say a funny dog. Take anything, copy image address, we can paste that here, source. Okay, this is a very big URL. Let's go to images, maybe something from, okay, let's take this. Let's copy the image address and then we paste it here. Okay, and we alt attribute is for when you hover over an image, you get a small pop-up on the right bottom saying what this image is. So we can say funny dog. Sometimes what happens is the internet connection is weak and your image might not load up entirely. So in that case, what you can do is this alt attribute, helps us there. It will load up even if the internet connection is weak, and you can see what that image was that did not load up. So we hit save, and we again hit refresh, and you see the dog image is loaded up. It is quite big. All right, next I want to discuss about is the table element. So how to create table in HTML, right? So we use the table tag. Now what a table has, it has rows. So we create rows. Row number 1, I contain some data. We'll create 2 rows. Okay, we hit save, and then we hit refresh here, and you see we got 2 rows right here. All right, now what we can do is we can add some border to it so that the table is actually visible. 1 pixels, hit save, hit refresh. Okay, for some reason that is not working. Okay, table row, and then inside that we need to add the data, right? I made a mistake. I'll just move it right inside. Yeah, it should work. So it is working. I'll just add one more table data here. All right, so we have a table that contains 2 rows, and then inside those 2 rows we have 2 data. Now what if we need to add more columns? We can simply add more table data to it to create more columns. So we'll create another I contain some more data, and we'll copy this and paste it again here. We'll hit save, and now we have a table that contains 2 rows and 2 columns. So this is how we create more rows and more columns. For creating more rows, just add a tr tag inside a table tag, and to add more data we add a table data tag. All right, now next up I want to talk about the div element. All right, so again write div, hit tab to complete it. Now you can use this for anything. You can create a box, you can create a circle if you wanted. It is simply used for any kind of container. Okay, so let's say I am a div. We hit save, we hit refresh, and it appears here. So div tag is basically used for any kind of container that you want to create. Next, after div, we want to take up the form element. It is used to create forms, so I'll just comment out everything so that there is visibility. Okay, I'll hit save and refresh. Okay, now the form element can have it also has some attributes. The action where we want the data to be posted. So let's say we want the data to be posted at index.html, let's say, and then we can have other attributes like the method through which we want to get it posted. So we can have methods like get, post. Now that is out of the scope of this video, and let's just take get for now. Now inside the form element we'll have tags like input for an input field. It can have the type of text, it can have the type of checkboxes, it can have the type of flow. So any kind of input that you want to take, we'll give it a name. So the name is name itself, let's say. Then we have a placeholder text which says name. I'll hit and save, and then it will make sense to you. Yeah, so this is how we take input. Okay, this is the placeholder text that we gave right here. This is appearing here, and this input element right here has the name. All right, next up we can have buttons in our form, right? So we'll give button, and let's say submit. and we'll give this button an attribute of type, and the type is submit. Okay, yeah. So now we have created a form with a simple placeholder and a text. So if we type something here, so let's say hello world, and we hit submit, this would actually be posted to something called as index.html. But right now, since we don't have a backend, it won't be posted anywhere. So this is how we structure our form element. uh, we have already discussed the self-closing tags, but I'll tell you a few more self-closing tags. So this is the div tag, which is again has a opening and a closing tag. But let's take an example of a self-closing tag. So this is HR. The full form of HR is horizontal line. It is again another example of self-closing tags. So we have a lot of self-closing tags in HTML. We hit refresh and you see we have a horizontal line appearing here. Then we have something called as the break, which will give a line break to our elements. We hit save, we hit refresh, and you get a line break which is invisible. Okay, so let's say we wanted to give a line break between IM and div. We can simply insert a self-closing BR tag here. We hit save, and div goes on to the next line. All right, now that is the very basics of HTML, and HTML is all about learning these tags, and you can use them over your web page. So let's just go and go over a brief summary of whatever we have learned so far. Okay, so we learned about the basic structure of HTML. We know about the head tags. Now it contains all the metadata. Everything inside the website is contained under an HTML tag right here. Then whatever we see on the screen is contained inside the body tag. And we also went over title. So title is appearing on the tab bar here, and we went through a lot of different elements or tags that we have in HTML. So we learned about the heading tag, which starts from H1 and goes all the way to H6. So these are different level of importance in heading. Then we have a paragraph here. Then we have an unordered list, anchor. We learned about how to add an image. Then we know how to add a table. We know how to add an empty container now. And finally, we know how to add a form, and we know about self-closing tags. All right, so yep. Yeah, video will be posted on YouTube. Yes, this class is recorded. Yep, certificate will be provided if you attend the session daily and fill in the attendance form. All right, all right. So that is all. Next up, we'll take CSS. All right. So next in this section, we'll hit save and refresh again so that our screen is clear now. Now in this section, we'll be learning about what is CSS, how it works, why do we need it to be able to make our websites look more beautiful. Now what exactly is CSS? CSS stands for cascading style sheets. It resembles the image of a water flowing down the mountain. I can show you. So let's simply type a cascade and let's see what comes up. Okay, this is how a cascade looks like, water falling from one level to another level to another level to another level. So this is how this is what a cascade means. All right, and we are going to see as we start using CSS why this analogy is so apt. It starts from the most general to the most specific style requirements, and the next part is the style sheet. So a style sheet is a type of language just like HTML, which is a markup language. So style sheet is basically a type of language which is used to specify how certain things should look on our website, right? And there are so many style sheets. The one we are learning and the one of the most important is the cascading style sheets or the CSS. But there are other style sheets like the SAS or the less and many others. But the most important one that every web developer needs is the CSS, and that's the one we'll be focusing on this course, on this bootcamp. So why did we need CSS? Okay, let's get to a little bit of history. In the very beginning, when the internet was new, there was no CSS, there was only HTML, and right now you've already seen how pure HTML looks like. And the developers wanted, to style their websites, but it was not possible. Then they were very very limited of HTML. The styles in HTML is very very limited, and it looks very boxy, and very less customization is available. So finally HTML 3.2 came up, which had a lot of attributes with the help of which you could style your websites. But it once you start adding style to all of your tags and elements at one place, the code became a lot, and it became massively cluttered for your HTML document. For doing very simple things, you might have to write 1000 lines of code to just style a simple, let's say, a paragraph tag. So finally in 1996 CSS came up, which allowed style to separate from HTML. It allowed us to separate styling from our content, and it introduced modularity. For example, someone was responsible to assemble the car, and someone was responsible to paint the car, someone was responsible to do the interior fittings, etc. So everyone was now responsible, or the website was broken down into modular parts. So someone could style the boxes, someone could style the headings, like that. So in coming lessons you'll learn that modularity is super important, not just manufacturing but also in programming, and that is where React will play a very important role. So now let us see what CSS is able to achieve and why do we need it. So now you can see, now you already saw that our website was very bland and very boring. And as we open a modern website, so let's take an example of Apple. You see, when CSS is applied to a website, how beautiful it looks, right? All right, so now we see how to add CSS to our website. Okay, now that we know why CSS is important and what CSS is, let's see how we can add this to our website. There are three ways to add CSS to your website. The first one being the inline CSS. Okay, as the name suggests, it goes into the same line as an HTML element. So let's create an h1 tag again, and let's type hello world, because without this how would you learn a programming language? Yeah, so this is an HTML element. Now we are going to add an inline style to this. So let's write style equals to, then we write color colon, let's say red. We hit save, we hit refresh, and you see the color of our h1 element is changed to red. Now an attribute, so what is this? This is basically an attribute. Now our attribute looks like this, and we have a name in the starting, which is style, and then we have an equal sign, then the value of the attribute, right? Now in the value section we add our CSS code. So this part here is our CSS code. The color colon red is the part of our CSS code. All right, the CSS code is broken down like the first part is the property that you want to change. So right now I've changed color, and then the second part is the value to which you want to change the property to. So let's say the property is color and second is red. Now this is the value of the property that we change, that you want to change the h1 element to. So if we changed it to blue, hit save, it would change to blue. Okay, now if you run this code, and it would render on the website with blue h1 element. Inline CSS is really useful when you want to add style to a certain element, but it can become really messy if we have tons of elements. So a website like very complex website like a Flipkart or Apple or any other complex website, if we keep on adding inline styles like this, at some point we'll start losing track of all the styles that we have added, and it would get really messy. And therefore it is not recommended to use inline style to an entire document, and is recommended only for specific elements when you are testing. So let's say we had a lot of elements and we want to see how something would look on the website. Immediately we would add some inline CSS to it and just test it out how it would look. So it is recommended only then, and not for the entirety of the document. Next up we have internal CSS. So how do we do that? So I'll just get rid of this first. Okay, so now the second way you can add CSS is through adding internal CSS. Now this is done with the help of special style tag. Okay, uh, we have got an opening style tag and a closing style tag, and in between these two style tag is where we'll add our CSS. Now it looks a little bit different, right? Why are we adding stuff to the head tag and not to the body tag? Because we want the styles to load up first and load up quickly before even the content loads up. So when the content will load up, it will load up in a particular style. That is why we're adding this in the head section. Okay, so let's say we wanted to change the color of this h1 tag from our internal CSS. What we would do is we would write h1, we'll write an opening and closing curly braces, and inside this we would write our properties. So we'll write color colon, and then we'll choose anything, blue violet, let's say, and then a semicolon for closing this. Hit save, hit refresh, and our color is changed. So it looks again, now another difference is previously we used attributes and the syntax was entirely different. This looks a little bit different. Why is it different? So it is because previously we used to add style to a certain element, but now this can be applied to any element. So we need an additional piece of code, and that is the selector. So this right here is the selector. So let's say we have another h1 element in our document which says buy world. Now since we have selected h1, this style will be applied to all the h1 elements in our document. We hit save, we hit refresh, and you see hello world and buy world both are colored into blue violet. Now the selector comes before the curly braces and the CSS goes in between these curly braces. The internal style can be applied to as many elements as we want, and an internal CSS is limited to only one HTML document. Why? Because it is inside that particular HTML document and not outside that. So you will have, so if you have a multi-page website, you should probably not be using an internal CSS. Instead, the third type of CSS, the external CSS. All right. So how do we, so as the name suggests, external CSS is stored in a separate file with a .css extension. So how do we link this external file to our HTML document? Let's see that. First we'll create a CSS file. So let's give it styles.css. Okay. So to create a CSS file, as said previously, we use a .css extension. Okay. Now, how do we link this external file to our HTML document? It uses a self-closing link tab. So when we write this, the relation to the external CSS file will be style sheet, and href will tell you the address to this CSS file. So this is how we link an external CSS file. Okay, this is done. We hit save, we hit refresh, and this is already linked. Now we can use the same selector here to apply CSS styles to our HTML document. So we can use the h1. Simply we can use the selector, opening curly braces, closing curly braces, and then we can write the CSS code inside this. So we can write color again, and we can write blue violet. We hit save, we hit refresh, and both of the colors are changed automatically. Okay, so now coming back, how much we have seen how to add inline CSS to our files, we have seen how to add internal CSS to our files, and then we have seen external CSS. We'll mostly be using external CSS because it again keeps the modularity, it is a separate file, so the code hygiene is maintained. A lot of people can be working on the same file, and since this is an external file, it can be linked to multiple web pages. So let's say if your website has multiple web pages, this is the index page, so the home page, the about us page, the contact us page, the same style can be applied to multiple pages, and this style sheet can be linked to those particular pages. So let's say we had another page. Again, I'll give you an example. So home.html, we hit save, we'll open that also here. So we have the index.html here and home.html here. We'll bring up our boilerplate, we'll change this one to home, and again we'll add in h1 here. home content. All right. And how do we link an external CSS file? We use a self-closing link tag with a relationship attribute and a href attribute. Relationship is style sheet, href will be to styles.css. We hit save and we hit refresh. You see the same CSS is applied to multiple web pages. So this is how it helps in modularity and code hygiene and code cleanliness. All right. So we'll get rid of this now. We'll delete this. All right. Okay. So next up we'll be learning about CSS selectors. So that now we have seen what a CSS selector is. It is basically used to select a particular element in our HTML document and apply the CSS properties to that to change the look and feel of that particular element or to change the look and feel of our website, right? So this is going to help us choose where to apply our CSS. We have seen previously that we can create CSS rules by doing this, selecting the selector and then writing the rules here. Okay. Now the first type of selector that we are going to learn about is the CSS element selector. Now that is pretty simple. We have been doing the same thing so far, as we have been selecting a particular element and changing its CSS properties right here. Okay. So we can take another thing. So let's say we take a paragraph tag and we write some content. Okay. So now we have two h1 elements right here and a paragraph element right here. How do we change the property of this particular paragraph element? We use the element selector. So we write p simple to select the paragraph element, to select all paragraph elements basically, because an element selector will select all the elements of that particular element. So let's say if we select p, it will select all the paragraph elements inside my HTML document. Right. Now let's say I want to increase the font size to, again we have some predefined options here, but we will go with, let's say, a 50 pixels. Okay. We hit save, we hit refresh here, and you see the size of our paragraph element has gone to 50 pixels. Now going back, let's say we want to change the color to let's say something white, Alice blue. We hit save, we hit refresh, the color is changed, it is not visible. So what we can do is we can add some other properties like background color. We'll give it a background color of, let's say, something darker to have a contrast. We'll give it aqua, let's say. We hit save, we hit refresh, and now you see this is how we are using an element selector to give our element certain CSS properties. Then now next is the class selector. So far we have not discussed classes. So what is class? Class is basically nothing but an attribute which we add to our HTML element, and this is used to group different elements. Okay. So, and how do we group that? So the class should be same for all the elements that we want to group together. So let's say this is an h1, this is an h1, this is a paragraph. I want the design of my h1, first h1 and my paragraph to be same. Or let's do an h2 right here. Okay, let's do an h2. We hit save and let's erase everything. Hit save, we hit refresh. Everything is back to its default. Now I want my h1 and paragraph to be of the same style. How we can do that? We can add a class as an attribute. So class equals to, let's say, first design, and make sure you don't have spaces in your class. So let's say if I do first space design, this particular h1 element now has two classes. One is first and one is design. So we'll add the same class to our paragraph tag here, class, and we always add the attributes to the opening tag. So first design, we hit save. Now we can go and select our class to apply certain properties to our h1 and paragraph together. Okay, so how do we select a class? We use the dot selector. So we write dot and then we write first design. make sure you have the spelling correct, otherwise it won't work. Let's check it. First design, and we have the same spelling right here. So we want the color of both our tags to be, let's say, anything. Let's take it as brown. We hit save, we hit refresh. Okay, there's some mistake here. Yep, we hit save, we hit refresh. So now you can see both of our elements were grouped together using a class. So class is generally used to apply certain properties to a group of elements, and this is how we add classes to certain elements. Okay, after class selector we have the ID selector. Now ID selector has its own symbol, specific symbol to select. So this is a dot, right? Similarly, we have a certain symbol for IDs also. Now how do we add an ID? ID is also added as an attribute. So we give it, it says ID design as an ID. This is how we add an ID. All right, now how do we select an ID? We use a hashtag. So we write an hashtag ID, and then the same open and closing curly braces, and we write the color as to be, we'll delete this first, and we write Alice blue. Let's not go with a lighter shade, let's choose brown again. We hit save, we hit refresh. Okay, ID design, you always need to spell it correctly, otherwise it won't work. Like, it is not working for me. Yeah, so we have added an ID here, and then we have added certain style to that particular ID. Now you might be wondering, what is the difference between an ID and the class? We can also add ID here, right? You can write an ID here and give it ID underscore design. All right, and again it does the same job, right? So how is it different? Can anyone tell me how is it different? All right, okay, nobody, no problem. So an ID is should be unique for a certain element in an entire HTML document. All right, it should not be repeating, otherwise it will react as similarly to a class. All right, so ID should always be unique to your HTML document, and that is where its significance comes in. You hit save, you hit refresh, and ID should be always applied to a single element only. Okay, then we have the attribute selector. So let's say we have an h1 element, and we have let any other attribute to this, maybe a draggable attribute. So we can have multiple attributes, right? We can have an ID, we can have a class, we can have a source, we can have multiple. So how do we select that? So let's say we have a source attribute here, something. All right, we will not mention what attribute, what is the value of this attribute. We just need to select this particular attribute. So how do we select this? We write h1, and then we will open square brackets, we'll write src. So this is selecting the h1 element that has a source attribute, and then the exact same thing, opening and closing curly braces. Then we change the color of this particular element to, let's say, blue. We hit save, we hit refresh, and this is changed to blue. So we've learned about the class selector, the ID selector, the element selector, and the attribute selector. All right, now finally we have the bosses of all, we have the universal selector. So this is basically a selector which applies to which applies the CSS rules to the entire document. So how do we use the universal selector? We basically use an asterisk sign, and then we have the same opening and curly closing braces. Let's say we want the entire document, or all the different elements in our HTML document, all the font color to be, let's say, red. All right, so we don't need to specify which element I am selecting. If I want to apply this to all of my fonts, I can simply use the universal selector. And when I hit save, I hit refresh here, everything in my document turns to red. Okay, So this is how it works. Now let's apply some css to our document and see how it looks. All right, so let me create a div. So I'll create a div with an id of box, and let's put an box inside. We hit save, hit refresh. You can see we have a box and we have a universal selector, so everything is turned to red. All right, now we'll use an id selector to know some of the css rules out there. All right, so, or we can use a class selector only, no need to go for an id. Okay, so we'll have a dot box, opening curly braces, closing curly braces, and let's say I want the width of this box to be 100 pixels. Then I want the height to be 100 pixels. Then I want the background to be, let's say, green. All right, we can apply multiple css rule to the same element or the same tags. All right, and then we have the margin. Let's give it a margin of 10 pixels. Okay, let's hit save and let's see how it is looking right now. We hit refresh and this is how it looks. Now the box is the box word is so close to the edges, we can give some padding too, padding of 10 pixels. Now what is the difference between a margin and a padding? So anything, I'll just hit save and first refresh. So anything outside this edge is a margin, anything inside this edge is a padding. So the distance between the text, the edge of the text to the edge of the box is padding, and the distance between the edge of the box to the edge of the screen is margin. All right, next what we can do is, let's say we want a border outside this box. So let's give it a border of 2 pixels. I want the border to be solid, and then I want the border to be, let's say, red. We hit save, we hit refresh, and this is how we add a border. Again, let's create another box. So we'll use the same thing. I just want to show you some of the css properties that are widely used, and we hit save here also. We hit refresh, and now we got two boxes of the same style because we have used a class selector and we have clubbed both the boxes as a group. All right, now let's say, so these boxes are appearing top down, right? I want them to appear from left to right. So how do we do that? We use the float property and we change this to left. We hit save, and now they appear from left to right. All right, so yes, these are some of the important css properties. Now, you know what you can do is, a good coder is not the one who remembers everything, but the one, you know, who can find everything whenever he needs to. So if you want to learn more of HTML, more of CSS, what you can do is, there are documentations available for these particular languages on the internet. Some of the most popular ones are MDN web docs. So you can write learn HTML MDN web docs. We hit enter, and then we are taken to the MDN web docs page where you can learn about everything. Okay, so data, time formats, everything, basically all the tags and everything, right? So you have a lot of tags here: footer, article, section, paragraph, div, span, image, a lot of these stuff. We also have, along with this, W3 schools. So these are some of the two popular documentations available out there. In this you get a very structured, so HTML introduction, editor, basic elements and everything. Similarly, what you can do is, you can also learn CSS. Okay, so it is not possible for anyone to cover everything and out there. So what you can do is, you can explore CSS and HTML with the help of these documents and keep practicing, and that will make you perfect, and you will be able to design more and more using these particular languages. Okay, all right, any doubts so far? Okay. So for attendance, an attendance form will be floated very soon, wherein you can fill in your attendance to get the certificate. All right. So for today, I'll just give you the basics of JavaScript. Next up, we'll be taking JavaScript, and after that, day after tomorrow itself, we'll start with React also. All right. Why div is used? It is just an empty container wherein you can enclose certain. So we can enclose multiple tags inside that empty container, and we can design all of that at once. That is why a div is used. So when only web technology is used to create an app, right? Can you please be a little elaborate? All right. So we'll move ahead with JavaScript next. So now that we have CSS and HTML down, let's learn a little bit about JavaScript. I'll keep the chat open. So in the beginning, way before Chrome and Firefox or Safari or even Internet Explorer, there was Mosaic, and it was founded by a person, if I'm not wrong, called as Mark Andreessen, and he worked on it even when he was in university. But when he finished university, he began to work on Netscape, and at that time, Netscape captured around 80% of the total market share. Subsequently, there was a huge browser war, and there was a huge fight between the then popular Netscape and the Internet Explorer, and it led to the death of Netscape eventually. But a lot of technology was from Netscape was transported and incorporated in the modern day company called as Firefox. You might know Firefox, you might not know Netscape, but definitely Google about it. So when we talk about Mosaic and Netscape, this was the beginning of the web browsing as we know of it today, and this is so popular, like we are on our browsers all day right now. So we are going to time travel, and I want to take all the way back to 1995 when HTML was all form and no function, and even if we needed to retrieving some piece of data, you searched for or calculated something. The website had to send the data to the servers first, if you wanted to calculate or search something, and it was processed there, all the computation and logic happened, and then it returned to the web page or whatever you see on the screen that contained the new data. So basically the old data, whatever you submitted, was taken back to the server, processing was done, and then it came back. Now the team at Netscape wanted something different, and it changed everything that we see today. So they envisioned a future where they wanted the world to be more dynamic with animations and real-time user interactions. And to be able to do this, the server had to be taken away for like smaller stuff, and they wanted the code to be able to run on the browser itself. They wanted something that could run locally on the browser itself, and the requirement was this language had to be simple and it had to be really easy so that non-developers and non-programmers could use it and add functionality, right? So then what happened is they contacted a guy called Brendan Ike, and Brendan sat down with his team and came up with JavaScript in 10 days. Now let's see what the world would look like without JavaScript. All right, so I'll take you to some of the famous websites that you see today. So Apple is my favorite because it is visually so appealing. So to turn off JavaScript onto your browser, I'll not use this one because this is their live streaming is going on. I'll use something else. Let me bring that on to this monitor. Just give me a moment. Okay, so I hope you can see this window. Yep, you can see. All right, so we'll go into Apple's website, and now how do you turn off JavaScript? So this is again interesting. You can go into settings from here, so settings, and then you can search for JavaScript, and then scroll down, and from here you can don't allow sites to use JavaScript. Now when you go back, and let's say I wanted to explore, I clicked on this buy button, you see nothing is appearing. You just get pure text, and everything is down. All right, and once we enable this JavaScript, so now let's enable and see what is appearing. We go back, we hit refresh, and you see everything changes. So let me just close it first. So the world is actually quite a scary place without JavaScript, and it goes to show how reliant and how dependent we have become on JavaScript, and it definitely dominates the web. And JavaScript was not even called JavaScript. In fact, when Brendan first created it, it was called as LiveScript. Why LiveScript? Because it was running live on the browser itself. And when Microsoft tried to reverse engineer this, it was called as JScript, not JavaScript. And they were slightly different, so all of this started getting confusing. And then the Europeans did what they did do best. They standardized this, and that's where ECMAScript comes from. Now you can look for the full form of ECMA on Google. We don't need to go in the depth here. All right. So enough of history. Why is it called JavaScript then, and what is a script? So you might have seen some plays, or at least know of plays. What happens there? Actors generally get a script, they memorize that script, and then do the play according to the script. Okay, so this is what a script is. It is as real as in real life. Okay, so another question we get is Java similar to JavaScript, and what exactly is the relationship? So someone great quoted, it is as similar as a car as in carpet. So basically there is no similarity between Java and JavaScript. The only reason why JavaScript was called JavaScript is because in the 90s Java word was as hot as blockchain are these days. And as you can guess, this is what happened in the 90s. Everyone wanted the word Java in their name, and that is how JavaScript came into existence. Now in the olden days, interpreted language like JavaScript and Python were seen as toy languages, very slow, not so powerful. They had to execute all the instructions line by line. By the way, yes, JavaScript is an interpreted language, and Java is a compiled language. That is also a difference. Now, so in olden days, C++ and Java were seen as most serious languages, and you end up running very you were end up in when the applications are very fast when you use C++ and Java. Today, modern day JS is used in all sorts of places where traditionally it was just front end only. But now from front end to back end, everywhere JavaScript is used, and that is how we can see the popularity itself. We open, and the most like one of the most famous websites, Apple, Microsoft, you can try it for yourself. They won't load up entirely, or even the browser won't function if you just turn off JavaScript. Okay, so that is how reliant and dependent we have become on JavaScript, and that is how important it is to know about JavaScript. So we'll start with JavaScript tomorrow. All right, I'll share you the attendance form right now, and you can fill in your attendance from there. One more suggestion is all of you please ensure that you have your LinkedIn accounts up and running, because tomorrow's attendance will be shared on LinkedIn. I'll just share the attendance form right now. If you want to follow me, you can I'll share my LinkedIn too, so you can follow me there. Yep. So yeah, tomorrow please make sure that your LinkedIns are there. It is really important these days. Your attendance form tomorrow will be shared on LinkedIn. So yep, stay tuned. Let's see you tomorrow. Thank you for joining. Have a good day. Bye. What for backend? This bootcamp is for front end, sort of, not for backend. Thank you guys.